Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. FPL is live. I'm your host, Zofa. My co-host, Late Riser, and I are joined by our friend, Big Man Bucker, for our first pod of the 22-23 season. How you been, Big Man?
I've been good, Zof. Thanks for having me. At least I'm doing well at the start of the stream. Who knows what happens in the stream? So to put things into context, I'm speaking to these guys after 2 months. I joined the stream, and the first thing I hear in Hindi and Urdu is "Aaj to maa behni karni hai." Now, to put it very nicely, for those of you who don't understand the language, they're basically planning to take me to the cleaners over the next hour or so. And that's putting it very nicely, by the way. So yeah, let's see where we go from here.
Very eloquently put.
How have you been, Pranil?
But season 3, man, can you imagine it? We're into our 3rd season of doing this podcast. It's been great. Last season was quite difficult on a personal front. And I realized how much I actually love doing this and how much I enjoy talking to you boys. And it's great. I feel privileged to be able to do this and can't wait to do a lot more content season 3. Bring it on.
It's excited. We might have some small audio issues drop out, but I think that's going to resolve as we go on. Later on, you had a bit of drop from LR there, but we've started a new league. So all of you guys, please join a new league for the new season. The code is in the bottom left screen. It is I8UW9F. Get joining there. And what else have you guys been up to? Initial thoughts? Bakar, how did you spend your break?
I had exams in the first half of it. As soon as they ended, I went to Dubai for a bit of a vacation. I was there for a couple of weeks. And yeah, I came back feeling very refreshed. It was a very much needed welcome break that I had, and can't wait to get into the thick of things already.
What about you, Pranil?
I did a little bit of a trip around Europe and it was great. Saw a bit of Amsterdam, Paris, Italy. Absolutely enjoyed the break, switched off completely from FPL. And hopefully looking forward to visit the UK sometime this season. That's definitely on the agenda and hoping to meet so many friends out there. So hoping that happens. Why don't Zof, you introduce who the FPL Wire is for people who are joining us for the first time this season?
So for those of you guys here the first time, we are a fantasy pod that tries going deeper into the information. We're not the kind of god, and we said this at the first time of our first pod, and I'll repeat this. We're not the pod that spoon feeds you. We rather teach you how to fish rather than provide you the information and say XYZ are the best options. We realize there are alternatives. So we try to present the information from a football sense and hopefully enhance your enjoyment of football. I'm quite rusty this whole podcast. I haven't had really conversations or any sort of Zoom calls for so long. It feels quite weird.
Yeah. And you're terrible at marketing. Since everybody is doing it, we should do it as well. All three of us actually had a decent season last year as well. So I don't know when that's going to happen in the future. But all three of us finished in the top 15K. So good job by us, guys. Last season, I'm hoping we have a similar season. As it's incredibly difficult to set those standards and reach those standards. But very happy with how that turned out for us last season.
Should we get going?
Sure.
Yeah, let's get going.
First up, our old sponsors, Diaz. I know you guys have missed this video.
Music to my ears.
DreamSetGo is India's first sports travel and experiences platform, offering a range of premium end-to-end authentic experiences across football, cricket, tennis, F1, rugby and golf, among others. From matchday hospitality to VIP stadium tours, from private meet and greets with athletes and legends to exclusive access to their training sessions, DreamSetGo curates the most fulfilling sports travel packages for fans like you. Ella, your turn.
Yeah, all the stats that you see on our podcast are from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. If you aren't a member, click on the link in the description below and become a member. And right now is just a really, really good time to become a member because the prices are going to go up really, really soon. And if you click on the link in the description below, you're actually helping us out as well because we're affiliates. So yeah, click on the link, become a member. And we have something else this season as well, which is the launch of our Discord. So I think we think that, season 3 seemed like a good time to interact and get closer with the community and all those people that are supporting us as well. So for all those that are members of our Patreon, as well as all our YouTube members, we have similar price tier memberships on YouTube as well as Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/the FPL Wire, or you can click on the join button below and you can pay us either 3, 6 or 9 pounds a month to support us. And with that, you get access to our Discord, which is a pretty cool place where we intend to spend a lot of time this season, get closer to you guys, get to know you guys. And we feel like it's a natural progression. It's already up. We've got around 15 people on the Discord already. We've got some names from the FPL community already on there. We've got Baker on there. We've got Pras. We've got the Net That Hall boys. We've got Alon from FML FPL there. So a good place to hang. You guys should join us, and we look forward to catching up with you there as well.
And we also plan on doing additional content in the terms of spaces. Like, a lot of times we get last minute news in terms of injury news and all this. It's not practical always to do it on YouTube. So it'll be a lot more personal in terms of the content we provide on Discord, which you can't really do on the Twitter and other mainstream media.
That said, our pod and everything else remains free and will be so for the season and on YouTube, as well as all your favorite audio platforms as well. So nothing changes. Right. I think that's it with the plugs off. Right. Let's get right into it. FPL's launched, and a lot of people had some controversial opinions about the game. I'm quite happy with how they've done the pricing. It's very, very interesting. And the single biggest factor for me in the first half of the season is the fact that we get a clean slate game week 16. So in case you don't already know, between game week 16 and 17, you're allowed to make unlimited transfers. And before that, you have to use your first wildcard, and after that, you have to use your second wildcard, right, Zoff?
Absolutely.
Now, how do you think this changes the game?
I think it makes things a lot more interesting because effectively you cannot use your first wildcard now after like game week 18, 19, as is usually the case in the end of December. You have to use it before game week 17. So effectively between game week 1 and 17, you have 3 wildcards, including the game week 1 where you can set up. So it's not really a marathon now. It's become a sprint, and there's a lot of chip strategies you can play around this. First thing that came into my mind now is you can possibly now bench boost. Either game week 1, you can possibly bench boost in game week 16 or 15 and dead end into game week 17 with transfers. Because the thing I think about the bench boost is how my team is going to have less money on the bench for the weeks going forward. So it might not be a bad idea to use the bench boost in the first few weeks.
Right. That's very interesting. I hadn't thought about the bench boost and editing your team and not, getting rid of the bench boost before double game week season might actually be a really, really good idea as well. Bakar, thoughts on that big factor in terms of having free transfers between game week 16 and 17, which is of course for the World Cup?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense that they've offered us this luxury of making free transfers for after the World Cup. I think it's only fair because you don't want your team to be, crippled by injuries or unexpected players missing out because of making the World Cup final. I think, overall, I agree with what you guys have said. You can afford to be much more aggressive early on and be a bit more short term in your thinking. And that is why when we, discuss our picks for this season, we'll look at this time frame for the initial 6 weeks to begin with, because I think that's a reasonable time we don't want to be looking beyond that at this stage of the season, because you can always wildcard your way out of trouble if you get into it. So that's one way of looking at it. And as far as Zoff's bench boost strategy is concerned, I think that's not a bad idea for sure. Even though personally I try and save it for the double game weeks, but if an opportunity presents itself, it might be worth considering.
There's something to think about. That's something that's different. Because effectively the biggest problem with the bench boost is you can't use a wildcard and the bench boost in the same week, but you can do it twice this season, in game week 17 and in game week 1.
I love the idea of going through and sprinting at the start of the season, because everything's open. A game week week 2 wildcard is something I'm open to right now, because there's so much at stake here, and we realize how we know how difficult it is to make ground in the second half of the season, with FPL getting more and more popular, with the template getting stronger and stronger, with so much information out there. The real time to make ground and set yourself up for a good season is essentially in the first 10-12 game weeks of the season. And I had a terrible season a couple of seasons ago where I finished in the top 600-700k, and then I was deciding to change the way in which I play the game, which is go very template. I was dullard last season, as Zoff has mentioned many times on our podcast. But the waiting game in terms of going template, etc. In the first of the season, I'm trying to rethink that now. I think that changes now. I think there's opportunity to take a few gambles, because you have the chance to wipe the slate clean even game week 2 or game week 3. And if you're doing that, you're not held with your team for a period which is longer than 15 game weeks, no matter what you do. So, if the template shifts and picks do emerge, etc., in the early part of the season, even if that's game week 2 or 3 or 4, I'm very open to hitting the wildcard button and trying to gain ground in the first of the season, because I think it's a season to be aggressive because of this early wildcard that has happened. I think it changes, and I quite like that. I'm excited about that. Yep. I think people trying to build balanced drafts, trying to play the longer game, seeing the value in these underpriced defenders that we have at the moment, because there are a flurry of well-priced 6-7 million defenders, and everybody on Twitter, everybody and their dogs are going big at the back. And I think you're going big at the back, and Heung-min Son scores a brace game week 1 against Southampton at home, and then you want to change the structure of your team and jump onto a third premium. Are you really going to sell Haaland before he plays those easy teams in game week 3, 4, and 5? I think City have Newcastle, Palace, and Nottingham Forest in 3, 4, and 5. Salah has Bournemouth, Newcastle, and Everton in 4, 5, and 6. Are you really going to sell these players before this? And are you really going to ignore that Spurs have become a much better team? And I think that's going to be a key factor going into game week 1, wherein if you're going big at the back, and if your squad structure is such that reaching that third premium or reaching that prime Spurs attacker is becoming difficult, you might be looking at yourself and a wildcard very early if you're not flexible there. So I think you need to have a plan in case Spurs explode.
Bakar, your thoughts?
I don't necessarily agree with the last part of especially what Pranilla said, because there's so many good picks this season. Sure, Son or Kane can brace or even get a hat trick against Southampton, sure, but that doesn't mean that Chelsea won't do well against Everton, or Liverpool or City might not explode against whoever they're playing, because it's just that a lot of good players are affordable this season and you can't get everyone. So, for example, owning Son with someone like White or Tomiyasu might not necessarily be better than someone like a combination of Robertson and Jesus. And that's where the 3 premium, argument comes into play. I do agree to an extent that this season going 3 premium up front is slightly more tempting, just because the 4.5 enablers are great. But I still think that the combination you get of, a 7 million defender and a 8 million forward or a midfielder is still better off than the 3 premium strategy. And as far as going aggressive early on is concerned, I don't necessarily think that's the case as well, because it's very important to start strongly, but I'm sure a lot of us will start off with Liverpool and City players, and I don't think there will be much to differentiate between you and the rest of the pack. So as long as you hang in there and start steadily, I still think that the main ground to be gained is the second half of the season, when the double game weeks will come into play, because that's when the variance will kick in with the chips and with double game week players. Because right now I see a very strong template, even stronger than last year. So I don't think there will be much between a lot of informed managers at the start of the season, because there's just so many good options out there.
So let's talk about
Of
this.
your thoughts?
Let's talk about this template, and they mentioned this on above average. What I try to do when building my squad is I try to have as many players from the top 6 as possible, especially early doors. Because obviously you expect those guys to start strongest, you expect them to perform the best. And what the pricing has done now, it's made it quite easy to have at least 8 to 9 players from those teams. So that's going to be my strategy early doors. I'm going to probably have 2 premiums. I don't think 3 premiums is still very viable, because you still can't captain more than 1 player. But I like the idea of attacking fixtures early, not as much as obviously like you said, game week 2, but I'm going to rather look at it for the first 6, because what happens afterwards, the promoted teams have much better fixtures, and the promoted teams, I'll share some stats later, have some great options this year. We have proper talismans. We have 2 good teams, especially in Fulham. Fulham's stats are absolutely mental. I think they're going to be strong. I think they could even give Liverpool a game for that matter. So definitely the way the pricing has worked is that big at the back just looks sensible. They haven't adapted. Like another thing that those guys mentioned was like Bowen. He's had 1 season above 200 points. He's 8.5 from 6. Trent has had 2 seasons back-to-back almost of 200 points, and he's at 7.5. So they haven't adapted the game accordingly, and that's pretty much how it is now.
That's not comparable though, right? Because you don't have 5 million defenders, 5 million midfielders or 4.5 million midfielders who are as good as the 5 million defenders and the 4.5 million defenders. So it's not an apples to apples comparison in that sense. I am not saying for 1 second bet against Trent Alexander-Arnold. He needs to be in your team at that price. And given his ownership and given Liverpool's fixtures, it would be incredibly stupid and optimistic of you to go without Trent game week 1. But just the point that I'm trying to make is that it's not an apples to apples comparison.
That's right.
In terms of, you've seen that template, right, Zoff? Now, I've been trying to think in terms of what in that template right now is a false optimism or sort of like a false proposition. What thought comes to your mind?
Neto. Absolutely. See, Wolves right at the top of the fixture ticker over here for the first 6 weeks. They were 19th for XG last season. We don't expect a Leopard to change the stripes over one preseason. They might get better, but you don't expect them to go from 19 to top 8, top 10.
Bucker changes every night.
Yeah, but Bucker's a tiger, not a leopard.
They come and
Panther.
they go.
Panther. Sorry. Black Panther.
Right.
Sorry. Don't distract me with these things.
Sorry.
Don't tempt
but
me.
Yeah,
Frodo.
Neto.
Yeah. Neto is an option, but let's just talk about quickly on the fixture list what we have up for you guys here. This is sorted by the first 6. Wolves top, Arsenal second, City, Liverpool, Brentford, Chelsea, Tottenham. They're all in the top 8, right? So again, it's quite simple. You have to build your team around the teams at the top of the table. And you can easily get around 7 to 8 players from these teams, I think.
That's fair. I mean, the question that I have up front, when I asked you that question in terms of what seems false in the template, and it's I have a slight lack of confidence. And you know me, I have a soft spot for your team. I'm always bigging up Chelsea assets. But at the moment, given what has happened in the transfer market, as things stand, I'm not sure about that Chelsea defense. Everybody is going big on.
I'm not either. Look at the fixtures. Just sorry to interrupt. I wanted to point this out because the fixtures I don't think are that great for clean sheets. You look at Everton away, Tottenham at home, Leeds away, Leicester at home, Southampton away, and West Ham at home. I expect us to score in each one of these fixtures. But in terms of clean sheets, you ask me now, I would say 2 out of 6, considering that Rudiger is gone, Christensen is gone. We don't have any centre backs.
Exactly. Do you carry forward the thought in your head that Chelsea are the 3rd best defense and an elite defense into this season? I'm not sure about that. Given the fact that there are murmurs that they might change their shape at the back, given the fact that they have 2 defenders who are a big part of the defense not playing, given the fact that N'Golo Kante barely remains fit nowadays, given the fact that Thiago Silva is 1 million years old. I mean, do you even count that? Do you take that into consideration? Yes, I know tomorrow Diaz comes back into your team and you guys get another really, really good midfielder. You guys are eyeing up FDJ, which I don't really like the thought of. But I think you tread with caution when you're looking at Chelsea assets. And now we're thinking about how do we spread that cash from that defense into our midfield and attack, right? And I think this is an opportunity where if we find out that Matt Doherty, who's been an absolute legend last season, is the definite starting fullback for Spurs, I'm happy to save that 1 million, knowing for sure that Spurs are predictable and they're going to play with wing backs. And that's definitely going to happen given who they bought. And their fixtures look better for clean sheets, if you ask me. Southampton at home, Chelsea away, Wolves at home, not Forest away, West Ham away, Fulham at home. They just seem like more predictable. We saw last season, actually, Spurs were the third best team in the country behind City and Liverpool, ahead of Chelsea, once Conte took charge. Do you want to save $1 million there? Do you want to save a 0.5 million on Perisic as well and go double defense on that Spurs? I'm okay with that. It's the first thing that comes to my head, where people are being incredibly bullish on Chelsea when their best defender has gone to Madrid.
I think let's talk more about the macro points which we discussed first, and I'll highlight why. I think wingbacks, we're all getting excited about defenders, but this is something we all need to keep in mind. This season is again not normal because of the World Cup, and it is extremely congested early doors to get the entire UCL round finished before the World Cup. So we have this graphic up here from Holly. So what stands out over here, up till game week 3, the midweek games are only for the EFL Cup and all that stuff. So you'd expect rotation, kids, fringe players. But game week 4, after game week 4, game week 5 is a midweek. It's a game week 7. So again, 3 games in 7 days, rotation. Then you have the UCL right after. After game week 7, another UCL round. Game week 8, international break. Then between game week 9, 10, another UCL round, and game week 12, also midweek. And then again UCL round. So effectively, post the international break, every team has a game midweek leading all the way to the World Cup. We're all loading up on
effectively
wingbacks.
Game week 4 onwards, essentially.
Effectively game week 4 onwards. It's absolutely spot on. So we are loading up on all these wingbacks, but are these wingbacks going to play every game? Definitely not. Especially with the 5 subs rule.
Yeah.
Bakar, your thoughts?
That said, we're still going to go for those wingbacks because they're the best defensive assets in the game. Bakar,
because I wanted to ask Bakar that because you're big on the defense. You mentioned that last season. But what are we going to do to cope with this rotation if you're going to go 5 at the back? Most of us are looking at having lots of 4.5 players.
The first thing that comes to mind is the Champions League doesn't really come into play before game week 4. It's only a factor after that. And when you speak of the Chelsea wingbacks being template, then Perisic is even more template because he's coming in at 50% as well. And I don't think there's much of a difference between the Chelsea wingbacks and Perisic, to be honest, because I see both of them as equally explosive picks. And those fixtures as well, from you were speaking from Chelsea's point of view, they look okay to me. I don't think they're too bad. And I don't really look at it this way that, I have James, so I won't get Chilwell. So I look at each position in isolation. And if I think that they're offering good value and they can do well and they're explosive, then even if they get like 115 pointer in one of those 4 games, they're justifying their value and they have the potential to do that. And that's essentially what you're banking on. And I do agree with Brunel that Spurs have an elite defense. But the problem there is that there is Spence's come in from Forest, who gives more competition to Doherty. Perisic is likely to start the first few fixtures, should be good enough for the first 4 fixtures at least before the UCL kicks in. But Conte has this tendency to sub his wingbacks, which is a bit of a worry. So a lot of this depends on what happens in preseason and how these defenses look. If Chelsea switch to 4 at the back, then I don't think I'll buy Chilwell. I'll probably just go with James, and I might even overlook Mendy if that is to be the case. And a lot obviously depends on whether or not you guys sign a centre back. So a lot of this is still up in the air.
But what are you going to do about the rotation that does come around during UCL? Will you wildcard and change your strategy? Because you're going to have problems. James, Chilwell, Perisic, Trent, you can probably say is safe, but every other wingback, every other fullback, even at City, even Cancelo, most of us saying he's a nailed-on pick. If they get Cucurella,
I think I'll cross that bridge when I come to it, because it's not really something I am taking into consideration right now, because the only way I can counter that is by getting a good bench, and I don't necessarily want to do that because I think it's better to put your money in the first 11 initially at the start of the season. So I don't want to really think of it this way. If I have to wildcard, let's assume 4 of my defenders get injured or they start getting rotated and the squad is decimated, then I don't mind wildcarding game week 5, game week 6 as well. And by the way, there are plenty of fixture changes across that time as well. So I don't mind that time necessarily for wildcard.
Exactly. No.
Yeah. And Zoff, how much of rotation are we going to see very early in the season as well? I reckon, given the state of the league, and Liverpool and City know that they can't give each other an inch, and the rest of the guys who are pretenders, who are looking to be title contenders, they know that they have a 90-point target at least to win. So how much of rotation can you really expect in the early part of the season when nobody's really tired? So I wouldn't worry about it too much in the early part of the season. I mean, I think maybe post the international break is when you start thinking about it, or start worrying about these things. If you see a trend, right? A problem is a problem once it appears as a problem. Until then, it's not really a problem. So I think if you start seeing this rotation is when you start thinking about it, right? I don't think you ignore the best picks in the game because of this little worry. That's where I am at the moment.
The point I was making is, right, what Bakar said, it sounds to me like a very reactionary wildcard. And that's what I don't want to do. I like to have at least some plan, like, okay, yes, I'm going to wildcard now. So previously, it's always been the second international break. But this year, what's unique is, and you remember that last year, post-break, we wildcarded at the same time, Pranal. There was very clear that I need to get 3 Chelsea. I need to get 3x from this team because there was such a significant swing. That's not there this season. So perhaps, and maybe this is something we can prepare, attack the first 4 game weeks with a sort of heavy wing back sort of thing, and then sort of prepare to wildcard around game week 5 or 6, and then perhaps go to like a more nailed on players, go to put money up front, because then again you can invest in the promoted teams, then their fixtures clear up a little bit. So this is just something that came to my mind initially, that maybe attack the first 4 weeks and then diversify the 4 at the back away from 5 at the back.
I also think because of how the fixtures have turned up, and because of that there being a clean slate come game week 16, I think your threshold to wildcard also might be a little lower. Because you're going to have 5 or 6 picks in the game that are fairly safe, whether you go for the Liverpool. I think you can't see everybody's going to go for Mo and Trent and either Diaz or Robbo at the start of the season, unless Darwin scores a brace in the Community Shield. Everybody is going to go for Haaland, as we know it. Everybody's going to go for a Perisic, and everybody's going to have 2 or 3 picks that everybody's going to own anyway. There are just going to be few opportunities, 3 or 4 players, if you're thinking about it, which might make you think you want to wildcard. So I think also in your head, you need to be a little prepared in terms of having a lower, you might want to wildcard just to make 5 changes in your team also. And I think that's enough because you're getting a clean slate game week 16. So don't be afraid to make these aggressive moves, was another macro thought that I had in my head.
What is the upside chasing play here, according to first thoughts?
Spurs' fixtures. Spurs. I think everybody's ignoring that, and it's a little bit of a blind spot. And I think there are a few things I want to talk about. I think, first of all, we need to see how this preseason is more important than most preseasons we've had in a long time. Because Liverpool, as we know, for the last 3 or 4 years, are going to change the way they play, because they have a big guy up front who runs the channels, and Sadio Mane, who's been a big part of the front 3, isn't there anymore. So how does this change things in terms of team dynamics, in terms of how involved the wing backs are? Is one wing back more involved than the other? Are there more combination plays? I am very interested in seeing how Liverpool matches pan out in the preseason. City played without a striker all season last year, and now they have Haaland. And we've seen when Aguero was playing with Sterling and Sane, and when Pep evolved his game and played with a false 9 and all these technical creative wingers where they choked the opposition, completely different style of play. And we're going to see something different now as well. So seeing how City play, seeing how who looks more involved when it comes to the City players is something that's important. And the third thing is acknowledging the fact that Spurs are running these teams close, in addition to Chelsea. I'm not ruling out your team as well, because they have great 3 fixtures to start with. The good thing about Spurs is they're as predictable as it comes when it comes to FPL points. We know that Son and Kane are going to be at the end of it. That's generally how they work. We know that they're going to play a wing-back system, and a lot of people are ignoring their assets. So I haven't had a tinker yet, but if I can squeeze in 2 or 3 Spurs, I think therein lies the opportunity.
I'm actually not that bullish on Spurs, particularly because from what I've seen, Conte struggles when there's European matches, and there are a lot of European matches coming in. He's a monster when he has 7 days to prepare his team. He can play the same 11 in train because he runs his players to the ground, right? And initially, might not be a problem for the first few game weeks and all. But that post-international break, I start worrying about how Spurs are going to perform with European commitments. Bakar, you were saying something?
I was saying that I think Spurs will start strongly as well, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I would want to shoehorn 2 or 3 of their players in my side, because the opportunity cost of buying them basically means either ignoring the City players or the Liverpool players, essentially, especially if you're looking at someone like a Son. Because if you look at Son, the critical thing for me is that Son and Kane have Chelsea in game week 2, and I want a Haaland for that Bournemouth fixture. So that's why I automatically rate Haaland over Son and Kane. As far as the wing backs are concerned, it's 50-50 between the Chelsea guys and the Spurs guys. And that's where I'm at, because if Son and Kane are out of the window, it's just the Spurs wing backs that you have to think about. And with Cancelo, James Chilwell, Trent, Robertson, you already have 5 proven players who've done it in the past. So it's not necessarily a case of, you have to get 2 or 3 Spurs players in, because sure, they can do well, but it's
you
not
don't have
the
to.
other options. Yeah,
I'm just saying that's where the opportunity lies. I just think that's where the opportunity lies. I bet, your tune would change if Heung-min Son had a 50% plus ownership, and you'd be thinking, no, everybody's getting Son, so let me get Son. Because Son scored 4 goals in the last 2 preseason fixtures, and the whole of FPL community has shifted their focus from somebody else to Son, and I think you'll be singing a different song at this point. I'm just saying where I think the opportunity lies in the first 3 fixtures of the game.
I think I'm very bullish on Haaland and City. I don't think that would be the case.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the players setting up for the first 4 weeks and wildcarding after, when this UCL madness starts, because you have the likes of Haaland, etc., who are going to start getting rotated around then.
Yeah, but I think we need to see a trend. So that's actually a good point, because we don't know how managers are going to react to UCL early season. Do you have any idea how Conte dealt with Europe in terms of, did he have a favorite team for Europe and a favorite team for the league, Sof? Or it was too down south back then?
It hadn't gone south, it got south after the UCL, but he still has his regulars who he flogs. Son and Kane are likely still going to play every game. You might have the likes of Hojberg, Betancourt. The guys are strong, but the wing backs is where he rotated the most. That's why you need to watch. And probably the third forward where Kulusevski, Richarlison comes in. That's another spot that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Yep.
This is unprecedented. UCL schedules have never been this congested before. This is the first time since the start of the Premier League has been like this.
And unprecedented in terms of how short term you can afford to think early season as well.
Where do you think Richarlison will come in? I'm pretty sure he's going to get appearances from the bench. So Son could be sort of prone to getting subbed a bit earlier as well. He was subbed a lot of times.
Even during with this schedule,
I don't think Kane will be. I don't know. I'd be very surprised.
I'd be surprised, but I don't think it's impossible now. I think now they actually have legit options. If they're playing a Nottingham Forest at home and they've just played like Inter Milan midweek, it's not impossible.
I see Conte viewing Kane as his 90-minute talisman who has to play week in, week out. And Son, he usually does take off around the 70, 75, 80-minute mark. And now that 5 subs are in play, and there's a very viable substitute in Richarlison, I think he could be rotated around that 70-minute mark more often this season as well.
From game week 5, the differentiator from FPL managers who are educated and fully involved is going to be X minutes. That's going to be a big prediction, because I think we're going to have to make those predictions early doors.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree.
Should we talk about the 5 subs?
Yeah, let's talk about the 5 subs.
So we have some data over here. This is from the first year where 5 subs were allowed post the pandemic. Like you can see from the images here, the most subbed off position wasn't in defense. It was actually in midfield. You see around 2.27 midfielders were subbed off on average per game. And this is from the previous season and from the other leagues as well. We see the trend. Only 0.5 substitutions for defenders. Midfielders, again, 1.7. Forwards, but it's not like teams are like falling over themselves, making like... No, sorry. This data is from 3 subs, Noel. I think this is from the Premier League.
This is from the Premier League in a normal season compared to a... Yeah.
Correct. So this is from the
So
Premier
what's
League
happening here is you see that the number for subs for midfielders goes up substantially when you're allowed 5 subs. So that's something to worry about when it comes to midfielders. We haven't seen that many subs for defenders. That said, if it's a wingback position, we could possibly see that based on squad size. That's about it. But the point that everybody's making, and I absolutely agree with, is that bench matters even less in terms of how you play FPL, and you can afford to spend lesser money on the bench, given this fact that, even though your player is not starting, the odds of him coming on, given the fact that manager has 5 sub that is disposable, is a lot more. So you can afford to go bottom price for maybe your second or third bench slot and be okay with one bench player, especially given the fact that you're going to wildcard pretty early as well. That's the biggest thought that comes.
There's a counterpoint to that as well. Doesn't it make players with very high X minutes like Tony, Mitrovic, etc. a bit more valuable?
It does.
Speaking of the promoted guys, I'll just go through some quick stats really quick. There are some impressive numbers from these teams this year. First up, Bournemouth. They averaged 2.8 big chances per game and 4.7 shots on target per match. Solanke averaged 0.7 goal involvements per 90, not expected, actual. And he missed 36 big chances. It's very close to the number that Bamford missed when the season they came up. Mitrovic missed only 24. His XG for the entire championship season was 32.5. Mitrovic was 35.9. The third, Carlin Grant, was 20.2. See the difference. So these two guys were such huge contributors. Now, Fulham's attacking numbers, 3.0 big chances per game, 6.1 shots on targets per match. They scored 50 of their 106 goals on the road. So it's not like they were very defensive in away matches, and over 20% of their goals were headers. Screams that the team is entirely built just solely to supply Mitrovic, and Harry Wilson was second for big chances created in the entire championship. He's another great asset we need to look at the 6 million price range. I think he's my favorite pick apart from the United guys.
I think it's...
Go ahead.
In terms, you were saying something, so I don't want to cut you before you finish.
I'll just finish off Forest and these numbers as well. So Mitrovic, as you guys know, he broke the championship record for goals scored. He actually outperformed his XG, 43 versus 35. But his expected numbers were strong, 0.94 XGI. That is XG per XA per 90. Forest are an interesting one because they have probably the best fixtures to start with. The first 3 matches, if you look at them, this Newcastle, West Ham, Everton, not the worst, not the best, but out of the 3, they're probably the thing. But what's something we need to know about Forest, 4 of their key players, the legend Keenan Davis, Zinkernagel, Lowe, and Spence, they were all on loan. They're very fundamental the way they played. They're not as attacking, 1.6 goals per game, 4.3 shots on target, 1.9 big chances. Fulham were 3. Now, Brendan Johnson, he landed 16 goals and 10 assists, but he was 13th overall for XG and 18th for XA. They've signed a new striker. That guy is interesting, but Solanke and Mitrovic, once the fixtures cleared up, they're amazing value. There's nobody in midfield who can match the value they offer for 6 and 6.5.
There's potential. We don't know yet. We don't know how the season is going to pan out.
But on paper, from what I can see, that these guys are going to definitely be in my team at some point or the other.
Yep. I'm just going to, it's a good time to plug when our listeners are going to see us next. We have scheduled a promoted teams pod with Luke, who's finished in the top 10 for Gafford now 2 seasons in a row, which is the championship fantasy game. And he was absolutely spot on with his assessment last season as well, where he told us that Ivan Toney is the guy to go for. He said that Norwich, out of the 3, he saw Brentford maybe staying in the division. He saw Norwich not cutting it. So I'm going to reserve all my judgments and opinions until I hear from him. That's all I have to say.
I still remember your pre-season pod with him last season. It was a great watch.
Yeah. So keep your eyes peeled out for that one. I think it's a good time to just tell people what we have in terms of content expected. So we have a promoted teams pod with Luke. We have a chat plan with number 3 from last season. At some point in the preseason, we have James from Planet FPL coming in just the week before Game Week 1, because I think Spurs are the template breaker and I want him to talk up Spurs just before the Game Week 1 launch. And the 3 of us will be looking in detail, position-wise, just like we did last year. We'll have a pod for the defense, we'll have a pod for the midfielders, and we'll have a pod for the forwards. So we've got at least 7 or 8 preseason pods lined up. Right now is a good time to click and hit that subscribe button and put your notifications on, because we have a ton of preseason content lined up. Right. What else do we want to talk about from a
I'm
macro
just having a
point of
look
view?
through at questions from our Discord. Let's just go through them. The Threemium, I think you guys are all about two premiums.
Yep.
No, I'm going to try for 3. I haven't had a tinker. I'm going to try for 3. And the reason why I think it could possibly work or it might work is because even if I don't try for 3, there are some well-priced players like Jamie Vardy, who's normally a 200-point FPL player. And Leicester are the team to watch out for this season, in my opinion, because they have no Europe. And given the nature of the condensed schedule that we have this season, I think just like Arsenal were last season, great FPL assets without having any Europe. Leicester are going to be similar this season. And I really like Vardy's price at 9.5 million. So if you don't really want to go 11, 12 million top for your third high-priced attacker, I think digging into a Jamie Vardy or even going for Maddison at 8 million might be worthwhile. And then there is somebody who I'm looking at closely as well, because a certain Ronaldo might leave Old Trafford, and Bakker's already said that he's going to pass Bruno Fernandes. But are you really going to pass Bruno Fernandes, who managed to beat Mo Salah's total last season with a Ronaldo in the picture? He's been FPL's highest point scorer when Ronaldo's not been around for a season and a half. He had a down season last year, and even in his down season, he had 150 FPL points. Now you add penalties to that, that's around 175 points anyway. And that is in the worst season United can possibly have, given the lack of absolute management last season. So what are your thoughts on that, Bakka?
If Ronaldo's in the picture, he's a no-go for me. Even if Ronaldo is not in the picture, I don't think I'll pick him at the start of the season, because at 10 million, I mean, you get Diaz for 8 million, Mount for 8 million. I know they're not, I mean, Bruno is more proven than them, but then again, under a new manager, I don't know how United are going to line up. Their fixtures aren't that appealing as well. They're okay. So 10 million is a stretch too far, to be very honest. And if Sterling goes to Chelsea, I think he's a better shout for that price, to be very honest.
Great. Just more content for me to clip, because I've already bookmarked your past tweet for Bruno Fernandes. I'm going to clip this and save in a folder as well.
Let's talk about Man United
I'm big on Bruno
a little bit, LR. What are your thoughts about Ten Hag early doors?
I'm ready for the revolution. I'm optimistic. I still hope we need to do the things we need to in the window, and a little worried because rumors just came an hour before the pod that you guys are looking at FTJ. Once that is in, I think United are priced to buy. I think you can buy United players. 7.5 million for Sancho, 6.5 million for Rashford is ridiculous. And we still haven't signed a DM, but what we might do is still score goals. And so we might go back to a season which was 2 years ago, which was, I think, the first COVID season, where I think we might score a fair amount of goals and we might have no value in defense. But there is enough talent on the pitch to get goals. And I think the United assets are underpriced. And I think they will be popular this season.
Could they be a team to target early on, like literally an easy fixture as he gels the team, maybe gets the defense organized? Because I remember I had good luck with doing this with Van Gaal. I think when he first came at Swansea, I think they played them first game of the season. Sigurdsson did really well. So there's just an adjustment period, right, for the first 3-4 weeks. And again, we know he's an attacking manager.
Salah in Gameweek 3 will be popular. Salah captain in Gameweek 3 will be popular. Again.
Absolutely, right. So
Wolves at home, Spurs.
So again, going back to what I was saying, I think United, we should maybe orient our thinking, because this guy's an attacking manager. He won't compromise his philosophy and focus on defense, etc. first. And if you guys concede a few goals early on, he'll probably stomach that. So I think United early on as a fixture, I don't mind having my attackers play. But
you do that, I won't.
Absolutely. But
let's just say I'm more bullish on United this season. I believe in Ten Hag.
I do believe he'll do well. Or you should always trust the bald man. But you should wait a little bit for him to get his message across.
That's I just don't think we'll be a team to target.
But early on, who will you even get? I mean, Brighton, Brentford, Southampton, Leicester, we aren't really looking at those attackers. I mean, Tony's the only one, and I don't think the fact that he is playing United in Game Week 2 should put anyone off from buying him. Leicester
is maybe somebody who's on my radar, and I think I like the United fixtures, particularly for somebody like Vardy.
That's in Game Week 5, I think.
4, 5.
Yeah, it is.
Due to that, I won't be supporting that theory until the proof is in the pudding.
But yeah, as you mentioned, Leicester is another team I really like without Europe. I think they're going to be a
big team.
Very
big
good
team to target.
Big team to target.
Yeah.
Like once the Champions League starts, Maddison, Vardy, I wouldn't be surprised if I double on them, because I'm very worried about the schedule in terms of X minutes for the top 6. Maybe more so than you guys.
Fair enough. And similarly, Newcastle for me, actually. Even Newcastle, they've upgraded in all formats and they have a spectacular defense. I think Trippier at 5 million is insane value. I think he is a great pick at that price, especially given if Newcastle carry on from where they left last season in terms of having control in the game, not really conceding that many chances. Their underlying numbers when it comes to the defense were really, really good as well. And Trippier is just an absolute beast. You know who he reminds me of? Somebody who is playing for a 5th, 6th team and is just an insane set piece taker ability-wise. He's Leighton Baines. Imagine having Leighton Baines at 5 million. That's what comes to my mind when I think of Kieran Trippier. And I just think it's too much value to think about. And these are the kind of places where I'm looking to gain 1 million, 1.5 million, etc. as well, based on fixtures as well. Zoff, you were telling me about you read an article where Aston Villa are talking about giving Dean more responsibility in attack, right? And Aston Villa's first 4 fixtures are really, really good. If you ask me, nobody is really talking about them at the moment. And their first 4 look good. They have strengthened. They bought
They're the
really
best.
good
They're top of the
players.
ticker for the first 4 if you sort it, brother. We just read out the fixtures for our pod, guys. Bournemouth, Everton, Palace, West Ham.
Yeah. And they've refurbished with absolute quality in the defensive midfield position and a new centre back as well. And there you go. If you look at playing the short-term fixtures with picks like these and hoping that the Deans and the Trippiers of the world match the 6.57 million guys, because you don't really have to think long-term based on fixtures. There's an opportunity to spend more money in attack. That's where I am.
Why would anyone pick Dean over cash though? Assuming that they're the same price.
I'll definitely
based on what
pick
you've
Dean
seen
over
in the
cash.
last game of the season.
The last 3, 4, 5 games, there's an absolute trend for all the attack to drift towards the left side. I'd pick Digny over
Exactly.
cash. Absolutely. And you mentioned Newcastle. Just want to touch upon their fixtures. I was quite bullish on Trippier, but gone slightly mellow. Forest away, good opening, but then Brighton.
Forest home.
Forest home. Then Brighton away, City at home, Wolves away, Liverpool at home. I'd much rather have Dean there.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
so-
if you talk about Forest, Brighton, and Wolves, in my opinion, there are 3 good clean sheet fixtures.
Potentially.
You know what I'm saying?
I get your point, which you're
Like
making.
you're not really talking about Brighton and Wolves as a team that's prolific in attack. So can I see Newcastle get a clean sheet in one out of those 2 fixtures? Probably.
That's a good point.
Okay, so my point regarding Villa and Newcastle, you can take Wilson for example. Wilson, Watkins, Coutinho is just the fact that sure, these guys have good fixtures and they have pedigree and they can do well, but I don't think they have the pedigree to get 15 points in a game, which is why I just think spending that money at the back makes more sense. It's too obvious not to do, basically, and I don't want to really go away from that strategy, even though I do think that Villa and Wilson will do well and they'll sort of be consistent in terms of points in the opening 4 weeks, but I just don't think they have the explosive potential that the others have. And I just think if they click, someone like a James or Robertson or Cancelo, they can just smash these guys out of the water.
I have no problems with Cancelo, Robertson, etc. I have my doubts about Chelsea at the moment, and I want to see what they're going to do in the market at the moment. I think people are being too bullish on them, and they need to wait and watch in terms of what happens with the Chelsea defense. It's a complete region of that defense. So that's where I am. And the only reason the needle has shifted a little, in my opinion, Bakar, is let's say we didn't have unlimited transfers between game week 16 to 17. And then you're doing the usual thing, taking advantage of double game week season and saving your wildcard for that. And you're picking your game week 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 wildcard team, keeping in mind that you need to pick it for 20, 25 game weeks. I get the point of going for these value picks who are going to be absolute sure shots for such a long, and you can't go wrong with them because they're obvious. But I think in the ability to think short term, there lies opportunity.
That's the only reason why. The fact that they're long-term picks, I realize that they could get rotated after game week 4 or whatever. But even in those 4 fixtures alone, I just think the potential of hitting 15 points in a game is much greater than someone like that of Watkins or Coutinho or Wilson.
Agree.
That matter.
Fair enough.
Agree.
Fair enough. By that, I'm going with 3 big defenders at least. It's about just the 4th and the 5th position where I'm thinking about spending more. That's where I am at the moment.
Precisely.
Because I agree, there is no debating the fact that they are the best value picks in the game. Can't argue against that.
And there's also the fact that there's someone like a Gabriel Jesus who's 8 million, and now
Let's talk
you get
about it.
Jesus with those fixtures. I look at him as more of a premium pick. I mean, I don't necessarily want to class him in the leagues of someone like Wilson or Watkins, because I do think that he's better. And just the fact that he's 0.5 million more, it kind of sort of makes it more appealing to go towards Jesus, and that's what most managers have done. I was having a look, and his ownership is like 44% at this point in time. So that's why these picks are unpopular this point in time, because others, the defenders, the other alternatives in that price range, they're actually more appealing. Even if I was to pick someone in that range, I'd probably go with Tony. I mean, I know his numbers have dropped, when Ericsson hasn't been there, but even despite that, I expect him to be consistent.
But I think Gabriel Jesus is spectacularly priced at 8 million, because he's like, I was expecting 9.5 million. That's what you expect your Arsenal striker to be
no-brainer
priced.
territory almost.
The only
I didn't
thing
want to
is,
say the word. I was very tempted to.
I know you.
the only thing in my head is, if Saka keeps penalties, then I'd go Saka. That's the only thing. If you're looking at 8 million midfielder versus 8 million attacker, and Jesus sort of has a little bit of he's good at bringing his wide forwards into play, right? He's got a fair amount of assists in previous season as well. He's good with his link up play. So I do think he will do what Lacazette did, in terms of he won't drop as deep, but he will get Saka into the game as well. And if Saka keeps penalties, and if you're getting 1 extra point per goal anyway, then I think Saka is a better pick than Gabi. That's the only thing. I want to know who keeps penalties for Arsenal.
Yeah, this is something I've been considering as well, because I have Jesus in my draft right now, and it's very 50-50 between him and Saka. I don't think we'll know. I mean, we might in preseason, but assuming that we don't, I think I'd go with Jesus, because he's slightly more likely to play 90 minutes. And at the end of the season, when Arsenal were playing with Nketiah, the center forward was getting a lot of opportunities. I expect Jesus to be that kind of coach. And in fact, I was listening to an interview of his once he joined Arsenal. He was very sort of keen to score more goals. He was very bullish about the fact that he wanted to score more goals rather than be this wide player. So he wanted to sort of make that number 9 position his own. So that sort of tells me that he's going to be more selfish than usual. And that also brings me to the point that his finishing isn't actually that great, because he tends to underperform on his XG. But then again, with those fixtures, I think he's worth going for at 8 million.
I just want to point out that people should temper the expectations a little when they're extrapolating their numbers from the last 2 or 3 seasons. When you're comparing the numbers of a guy who's been playing striker for the best team in the country in an attacking sense, and then moving to Arsenal, who don't really create that much in terms of volume of chances, you need to temper expectation. But even given that fact, 8 million is a good price for Gabi J.
So the reason I like Jesus over Saka is one reason only: price points. So I made a quick first draft, and the basic structure without going into the picks is 4.5 goalkeeper, 4 premium defenders, 1 5 million guy, Salah, and I think Luis Diaz, personally for me, is outstanding value for 8.2, and plus it takes care of that price point also, where you have so many other options at 8. Then up top, currently obviously gone with Haaland, because that you can move to Kane if need be. And if you get Jesus, let's say he doesn't deliver what you can move on to your Wilsons, Watkins, Bamfords, etc. The last spot is where possibly I'm not sure whether I want a Mitrovic or maybe a Rashford or something, or the 6.5 midfielder. But I think this sort of structure is pretty flexible so that you can move early on. We don't have that 7.5 forward. And I do think the 7.7 to 7 point forwards are better than the mids at that price. You're a little bit constrained.
All you need is one to emerge us off. Like, if you remember, Benrahma wasn't in any of our thoughts when we had our first spot, and then names prop up.
Correct. And that's why I like having that price point. That's why I'm most likely going to shift the 6.5 striker to midfield, because the 8 guy can still become. So early doors, I want a very flexible structure in terms of the price points. And Jesus affords that more so than Saka.
Yep. Fair play if you're not looking at any other strikers, because you can go Saka and you can go slightly higher up on your striker position in terms of Vardy. That might mean a little more compromise in defense, but just subtle nuances which lead to these things. But a few people in the Discord asked about that third Liverpool position in terms of Trent and Salah being sure shots, and Robbo was Diaz. Your thoughts, Pakar?
I've been on Robertson since day one. I was having a look at the stats since Diaz joined, and since game week 24 last season when he joined, he's averaging 5.4 points per game, and Robertson that spell is averaging 7.2. I just think of Robertson as a more of an explosive pick than Diaz. And another thing with Diaz is that he was actually subbed 7 times out of the 11 times he started last season, and that's only going to increase the season with the subs that are coming into play. Of course, he's going to get more playing time now that Mane isn't around, and he's a good pick. But I just think that Robertson is going to be a better asset for 1 million less. That's the way I'm looking at it.
My argument against that would only be opportunity cost. Instead of Robertson, there are plenty of good defenders who are even possibly cheaper than Robertson, the likes of your Chilwell, James, Perisic, or second Spurs wingback. But I think at 8.0, Diaz is a standout midfielder at that price. That's the difference between the two. That's what tilts it.
Is he really the standout midfielder? Because there are other options like Mount, Foden.
I don't like
even
Madison is probably the only one I like.
Even
Madison
Saka
and Saka, but I think
Saka.
Diaz is absolutely another level. He plays for one of the most attacking, possibly the most attacking team in the league. And Mane has gone. He's just so much more exciting to watch. I don't see Jota or Darwin. I think Darwin initially is going to be used more in the center forward role. I have big hopes from Diaz.
Yeah, if Mane is like for like replacement and first choice, you're essentially paying 8 million for Mane. And you need to take into consideration the fact that Diaz, it was his first half season in that Liverpool team last year. And he started off on a nitro boost last season, and still his numbers were low because he didn't finish a lot of his chances. Now he's integrated a lot more into the team. He knows his teammates a lot more into the team, etc. as well. So you do expect a slight increase in numbers there as well. That said, it's a tough choice, and I don't think there's a wrong answer here between Robbo and Diaz. Whatever suits you.
It's not as clear cut. Because the point that Zoff makes is that you actually have to look at a combination of Correct. 2 players, which is what makes it tough. If it's like a one-on-one shootout, then I obviously prefer Robertson. But when you're looking at a combination, it's not as clear cut.
So just some quick
The price
stats.
that stood out to me actually from Liverpool, though, sorry Zoff, is just one that we're not going to go with on our game week 1 teams, but one to watch out for that could be an absolute steal is Konate. If he is the Liverpool team starting centre back, he's an absolute beast in the air. You remember he was scoring goal after goal in the lag F last season. Just to watch out for, if he ends up being Liverpool starting centre back, 5 million could be a steal. Just keep an eye on that spot.
It could be, but I think it's a waste of a Liverpool slot.
Not if he's that goal scoring maniac.
I know we said that about Matip also last year, so it could be for a shorter period. But
it just needs. So Klopp last year had a clear starting centre back in the league and a clear starting centre back in the Champions League. If Konate is the guy in the league,
yes,
you pay close attention. That's
your point.
The thing that comes across to me is just the fact that with the top teams, I never really look for bargains. You just simply have to get the best players, the most explosive players, and I don't like looking for saving up on cash when it comes to the bigger clubs.
So the stat I wanted to share with you guys, sorry Ella, just quickly, regarding before we move on from Diaz, I ran a comparison this morning between all the 8 million mids besides Foden, that's Saka, Mount, Maddison, Luis Diaz, and Kulusevski, averages for the whole season. Now, in terms of points per game, Kulusevski was top, 5.5. Funnily enough, goals per game, they averaged all 0.3. In terms of shots, Diaz is top, 2.9. In terms of shots on target, Diaz is also top, 1.0. In terms of big chances, Diaz is top, 0.5. The next best is only 0.3, which is Mount. And shots inside the box, 2.1. None of the other mids, I think all of the other mids, the highest is Saka at 1.9. Like Mount has 1.5 shots in the box, Maddison at 0.9, Kulusevski is 1.1. His stats completely blow the other guys out of the water.
Zoff, I did a very similar comparison this evening, and Foden had the best XGI per 90 from all of these.
Foden.
And second,
he's really not an option. None of us are going to buy Foden. Are you going to buy Foden game week 1? Don't say he would.
If he looks,
you are different. I'm asking Bakar is talking shit. Bakar, will you buy Foden game week 1?
That doesn't mean that we don't have to discuss him. I mean, I'll only have 15
You just said he's a good option.
That doesn't mean I don't talk about the rest of the other
You talk about them, but don't say he's a good option because I know he's never going to make your game week 1 team. Say that he could be a good option.
He could if he looks good in preseason. He could be. He could make my team. I'm just saying that his XGI per 90 was better than
bullshit.
Diaz's. It is.
Of course,
you can check it out.
Because if you play limited minutes and all that stuff, of course your XGI per 90 is going to be better. I'm talking about XG
Diaz
per
was
match.
mentioned 4 of his 11, in 4 appearances as well. Diaz was mentioned as well. I know that Foden is a risk, but that doesn't mean
Let the chat take a
Diaz
call.
wasn't a risk last season.
Who do we expect to see in Bakar's game week 1 team, Foden or Diaz? You can pick my game week 2 captain if I see Foden in your game week 1 team.
But Zoff, I'll side with Bakar on this one. I think I can see Foden in this game week 1 team, given if things pan out.
It's not as if Foden is a completely ridiculous pick. If he looks good in preseason, then why not?
But I put it out there. If I see Foden in your game week 1 team, you can pick my game week 2 captain. Let's see. And if he's not in your game week 1 team, can I do the reverse?
At the moment, I don't have an 8 million midfielder in my team at all. But if I do, then I'll let you know.
I'm really hoping for a spectacular preseason from Phil Foden, and for the fact that he's in your game week 1 team, because I want to see pick Bakar so far as game week 2
Let's
captain.
do it.
That'll be
I'm
fun.
down. I'm down for it. On that note, should we just take some questions? We've already gone over an hour. Let's take some few questions, wrap up.
All right, guys, we'll take a few questions. I have so much more to talk about, man. You guys want to do 15 minutes more? Are you good for it? Are you hungry, Zoff? We can do 10, 15
I'm
minutes
quite
more.
hungry, actually. So that's why I thought
You're quite hungry.
We'll do a Q&A and wrap up.
You were eating Bakar up there.
Yeah, I'm possibly maybe a little bit hungry.
But that said, man, I just want to say it feels great to be back chatting FPL with you guys. Totally gets me in the mood. And I'm really happy with how our first pod has gone in terms of, it's been a real discussion. It really hasn't been agenda sort of talking. We've had a freestyle chat and it's exactly what I was hoping for. So it's been great. Right. Hey, wow, Zoff, we can see you on the screen now, finally. Oh, we could see you on the screen. Rotation just goes for about City mids. Let me see until the time questions show up in the chat.
There were SuperChats as well, Pranil.
All right, let me see if I can find them. Karan has asked a question. The last half-season midfielder who was low price in his first full season was Bruno. And we know how that ended in his full season. Yeah, he was top scorer. He beat Mo Salah. Nehal Kulkarni, 2 into 8 million mids and 1 4.5 forward, or 1 in 8 million mid, 1 5.5 million mid, and 1 7. Too early, Nehal. Too early. Absolutely.
All depends on the picks.
Yeah.
We're going to learn so much in the next 4 weeks. You need to not be nailed and set on any picks except for maybe Mo Salah and Trent. Everything else is open, if you ask me.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Absolutely. Even Cancelo and Haaland is completely open in my eyes.
Yep. Is 5-3-2 the best formation for the first 4 weeks? Aditya, it's a great formation, but it's arguably the best formation. I think there might be opportunity to play short-term fixtures, etc. as well.
Bakar, do you still think Rhea is the best value 4.5 goalkeeper option?
Absolutely. I do.
Subramania is asking Grealish, would he be the breakaway scorer? His underlying numbers were great last season. And now he's supplying to Haaland, who's a proper number 9 in that team. I think it will increase Grealish's output. And I'm very, very bullish on him this season. 7 million might just be a breakthrough price for Jack Grealish.
City's front three, besides Haaland, no go for me.
Oh, come on. I even think, I think everybody's wrongly ruled out Kevin De Bruyne already as an option as well.
I said the front three.
I think,
besides Haaland.
But I think, because what's going to happen is they've gotten Calvin Phillips. The video is lagging. Is it just for me?
Yeah, just for you. It's fine otherwise.
Yeah, it works for me as well.
Cool. Hope there's nothing wrong at my end. Yeah, it was fine. What do we want to talk about? Yeah, so I think if they bought Calvin Phillips and if Kevin's not getting any younger, he's getting a lot older. So I don't think Pep's going to give him a lot of responsibility. And just like the second half of the last season, I think he's going to be closer to goal, even though he's supplying to Haaland. I don't think he's going to play like that 8 that he's been playing for City. I think he's going to get a lot more freedom and he's going to play a lot closer to goal. So he could well end up being worth 12 million. I just don't want to rule that out at the moment. That's all. People are just sending us thank you messages.
It's great to be back, guys. Yes, we can hear you. We appreciate the love.
Right. Just in case you're joining us now as well, if you really want to get involved with us and start talking and interacting with us, we do have a Discord in place. You can join that by either joining our Patreon or by becoming a YouTube member, and then that should lead you to our Discord channel anyway. And we're looking forward to interaction there as well. I think we'll wrap up now, Zoff.
Yes, let's do that.
Yeah.
Any last words, guys?
Right. Watch out for our pod on Tuesday, where we'll be discussing promoted teams with Luke, not Disciple, FPL Irons, who's absolutely great and the only person you should listen to for promoted teams. See you next week, guys. Any last words?
It's been a pleasure, guys. Take care.
Good to be back and see you next week.